Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome to this edition of News Nuggets and Insights. This is our very first News Nuggets and Insights for December. Today is December 2nd, 2016. I want to welcome everybody. There's a lot to cover today, so let me get right into it. I want to talk first of all about a pattern that seems to be very disturbing in the nation that we have today. It's a pattern of disrespect. It's a pattern of disobedience. It's a time where God said toward the end time, it would be a time of iniquity where lawlessness shall abound. But in addition to the lawlessness, there seems to be a simple just disrespect to our nation and to our flag. So I want to talk about that first because it seems to be accelerating to a new height. Flag burning used to be something that we would see in other countries. But during the election this year, we began to see an acceleration of protests across the nation of people burning American flags while they're here in the United States as a form of protest, while they began to fly flags from other countries at the same time. Following the election, we began to see a new round of accelerated protest, and the protest is in defiance against the nation and against the flag and our national anthem. What I've put up here is two pictures. The first one over here is in Portland, Oregon, where not only protests, but riots, actually burning, tearing apart windows, businesses, and looting, and things like that nature that began to grow. Then, of all places, in Washington, D.C., at a university called American University, of all places, on the steps of that university, they had a protest. They estimated maybe 200 or more students, and they actually burned several flags. It's really hard to see here, but you can actually go online. And they have burning flags right there on the grounds and on the steps of that university. Now, what's disturbing about this is it's beginning to gain popularity even in the media, which seems to give it credibility. Now, in addition to that, another thing began to happen this year, which tends to blend into the same problem that we're beginning to see across the nation. At the beginning of the football year, Colin Kaepernick, which we never covered this before, but I want to cover it today because this has grown into something that you never would have dreamed would have happened in our nation. Here we have Colin Kaepernick. You can't really see him, but he's sitting down right here while everybody's standing. So I brought another picture up where someone in the news media has actually highlighted with him sitting in total disrespect to the United States. Of course, his recent comments about Cuba and Castro begins to tend to where the people's mindset are, who seem to call evil good and good evil. And that's the acceleration of the problem that we're seeing. And it's permeating into our younger people who's growing up and are being taught in their schools. So this began to take place, but what happened is it began to spread. You see his teammate next to him the next game, and then it began to grow. There was 3, then more, and then it began to grow into other teams. And what was really bad is that it went into the colleges, into high schools, and they actually began teaching in grammar schools now to the youngest people the right to be able to speak your free mind, to protest, even to the point of destroying and burning the flag and the disrespect to the nation itself. So why am I bringing that up today? All right, so this is not new. We've seen these things beginning to accelerate. It's because now we've seen in one of the universities up north at Hampshire College, is that they actually removed the American flag. They just took the whole flag down in the nation. And it was called, as they called it, a symbol of fear. Now try to imagine this, in this nation where people, even to this day, are fighting and dying for the freedoms that they have to be able to go to those universities, and the university itself being supported through the taxpayer dollar of the country itself, protesting that the American flag in the country they live in is a symbol of fear. Now listen, this is from, these are excerpts that I'm going to read out of a letter put out by the president of that university. This ought to shock you and ought to wake us up. After some preliminary consultation with campus constituents, much more is needed, he said, we decided on Friday that we will not fly the U.S. flag or any other flags on our college flagpole for the time being. And I believe this was on the Friday after Thanksgiving. Now, why would they say that? We hope that this will enable us in the near term to instead focus our efforts on addressing racist, misogynistic, Islamophobic, anti-immigrant, anti-Semitic, anti-LGBTQ rhetoric and behaviors. In other words, we've got a flag that represents fear. And we're going to take this fear out of this college campus, and we're going to begin to address the concerns of all these radical people who don't agree with the American flag and the freedom that they have, that they actually live in today. Now, this is unbelievable that it's being done in a university and being accepted. Well, fortunately, at this one particular time, there was a huge firestorm of protest and pushback. And what you're seeing here is the people who actually came to the grounds and began to protest putting the American flag back. As of today, this is 1 week later, it still has not been done. Now, we addressed this a little bit in the special we're working on today, the Constitutional Christian, because you see, Abraham Lincoln talked about the internal struggles of a nation. And when he looked at America, he said, if it ever come to a time that we could destroy ourselves, it would come from within. When we allow the disrespect, the disunity, and the lawlessness to abound in a nation, the Bible warns against this, is that if we allow that to permeate into the system we have, we will destroy ourselves. So now, if we have that video ready, well, I'm going to play that little video. It's less than 2 minutes long. It's from the Lyceum Address about 30 years before the president took office in the Civil War. So if we can play that now.
At what point shall we expect the approach of danger? Shall we expect some transatlantic military giant to step the ocean and crush us at a blow? Never. All the armies of Europe, Asia, and Africa combined with all the treasure of the earth in their military chests, with a Bonaparte for a commander, could not by force take a drink from the Ohio or make a track on the Blue Ridge in a trial of 1,000 years. At what point then is the approach of danger to be expected? I answer, if it ever reach us, it must spring up amongst us. It cannot come from abroad. If destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be its author and finisher. As a nation of free men, we must live through all time or die by suicide.
That message by Abraham Lincoln became more of a prophetic message and a warning for this nation than I believe anyone ever dreamed could have taken place in that address. What we're looking at in a nation today, if we don't stand up for our freedoms, if we don't stand up for the God-given rights and stand on the laws that established this nation, that were built upon the promises of our founding fathers, as Abraham Lincoln said, we will die by suicide. It's time that we in God's church stand up and speak boldly for the freedoms that God's given to us and stand up by those laws. We'll cover more about these in future News Nuggets and Insights. But I wanted to bring this out today because you see, this type of spirit is an evil spirit that will destroy, like a cancer, from within. The Quarterly Magazine. We have the new Quarterly Magazine out. It's in December. I've got a cover right here. I wanted to share this with you. It's got a lot of information into it for those who are not familiar with the Quarterly. It comes out, we try to get 4 of them a year. Sometimes we only have 3, but this year this is the 4th one. Inside this edition, we go into talking about the constitutional Christian. We talk about, we have a lot of pictures of the development of it. We talk about why we're doing it, things we want to cover, and its purpose, and take several pages. We also focus on an article on why outreach, or outreach why. In other words, why do we spend our time focused on proclaiming a warning message to the nation and basically to the world at large? We go into some of the specifics of why the Bible specifically tells us we must proclaim a warning message to this world, which is one of the reasons why God has called us into the truth and out of the world in which we have. So we covered that also. We also, at the end of it, on the back cover, is an advertisement which is promoting the newest series that we're beginning to put out this month. All right, it'll start this month. And if you don't have the quarterly, you can actually get it. Let me show you. I'm going to back out of the PowerPoint, and I'm going to go to, let's see if I can pull this up here. All right, well, here's where I'm at. I'm now at the website. All right, so now, if you haven't been to the website yet, or you're just hearing about this, or you're a new person who's been responding, and we've been getting a lot of new requests every week asking about the work and going to the website. In the upper right-hand corner, I'm just circling around the corner, is the address bar, is to go to our website. Simply go to THECOGMI, which is the acronym for the Church of God Ministries International.org, and it'll bring you to this front page. So what I want to do is I'm going to walk you through this to be able to get the quarterly. You can actually, it's online right now. So if you scroll down a little bit on the front page, you'll see right here in the middle, in the newsletter, monthly newsletter, just click on that. It'll take you to a page where we have about a year to a year and a half of the newsletters going all the way back, and you'll see the regular newsletter, and then off to the right you'll see the quarterly, where we're covering specific information that is very timely about the times we live in today. For example, we have Kerry here when they were negotiating the deal with Iran. We have the blood moon tetrads and what that possibly meant with having the blood moons on God's holy days. We started this year with talking about our new studio, which I'm in today, by the way. And then let's see if we update this. Now we have it updated. We have showing the Governor Huckabee. Well, we awarded Governor Huckabee a plaque for thanking him for being with us for this special we're working on, the Constitutional Christian. And of course, we have this quarterly right here that tells you about what's going on today. So you could get it. You can go to that page, just click on it. You can download it, or you can read it online. So sign up for it, write in for it, or instead of even waiting, simply go to it and start reading it right now. All right, so now let's go back to where I was. All right, here's what's in. We went through this. All right, so we got that covered. Now, we have it posted on the website, as I said. 75th anniversary this week, coming up. What 75th anniversary am I talking about? What if I told you December 7th? Does that ring a bell? Now, I'll be surprised that there's a lot of people that seem to not know anything about history, that if I went out into the street, and I do like they do on the Fox News Network in O'Reilly, where they have what's called Water's World, and he actually goes out and he talks to people, and he asks them about specific days. How many people have no clue of the history, the foundation of our nation, or what's going on? December 7th, 2016, what would I find? World War II. It is the 75th anniversary of the bombing of Pearl Harbor. So I'm going to tell you about that because we are offering some special this week online that you can watch and download for yourself. I want to go back now. I'm going to talk about something that happened about 10 years ago. It reminded me of a phrase that's actually in the news even today. It says, with their numbers shrinking, Pearl Harbor survivors make final pilgrimage to Hawaii. And they made a comment even this year. It's talking about the passing of a generation. And They estimate there's as few as maybe 2,000 or more survivors of Pearl Harbor still left today. In 2006, I had made a trip to Kansas City. I'm going to digress a little bit and tell you a funny story and how I came about doing the sermon that we're offering today. I had flown into Kansas City because I wanted to meet with a minister up there that I had been talking to, and I'd planned to drive down toward Springfield, Missouri, where we're going to be meeting about 45 minutes north of Springfield. So I flew into Kansas City, so I was about an hour and a half or so north of where I needed to go. Well, that Friday night I was watching the news in 2006, it just happened to be in December, and they were talking about Pearl Harbor, and they were talking about the 65th anniversary. And back then they also talked about the passing of a generation. And so when they talked about the passing of this generation, it began to trigger in my mind something from the Bible. And so the passing of a generation, I kept thinking about that all night long. Well, the next morning when I woke up, it began to click that that was something that I remember reading that was in the Bible, some warning messages for Jesus Christ. And it was found in Matthew 24. So it says, now learn the parable of the fig tree. When its branch is yet tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. And so likewise, when you shall see all these things, know that it is near, even at the doors. Verse 34. Truly I say unto you, that this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. So I began to work that in my mind, and I was reworking the sermon to deliver that day as I'm driving down, thinking about these connection points. And there were two that came to mind that were very important. This one here. So as I'm developing the sermon, I'm thinking about all these scriptures that began to come into play. So I'm driving down, and I didn't realize it. I drove right past my exit on the interstate. And I went another hour or an hour and a half past my exit. And my phone rings, and Maynard Sammons was calling me from Florida. He's one of our ministers up in Jacksonville, Florida area. And he asked, he said, where are you? And I said, man, I don't really know. I said, I'm past my exit. And I came up to an exit, and he was telling me how to get off to go to Oklahoma. So I had drove way past, and I was getting closer to go to Oklahoma than where I was supposed to be at. And so anyway, I turned around, and it's kind of funny. So I called the minister who was conducting the service where I was supposed to be, and they were going to have a potluck. So he said, look, no problem. We'll have the potluck first. And by the time we finish and pick up and reset for church, you should be here. So that's exactly what they did. So I turned around, I drove in, and as I was getting through, they were just finished picking up, and they were setting up for service, and it worked. But anyway, it was just one of those stories that you get so involved in what God begins to share you, and you lose track of time, and you lose track where you are. And that's what happened to me to work on this sermon. But I put it together in such a way that I'd never quite understood before, and I began to draw some connection points, which I put in the sermon. Now, this is the first one. It says, for then there shall be great tribulation. What we're talking about, the time, like the people were talking about with the veterans who are dying, the passing of a generation. It's talking about in verse 34, and you said that this generation shall not pass. Well, what was Jesus talking about that when all these things began to happen? Well, it couldn't be that generation because that generation is dead and gone. So what was he talking about? He was talking about the generation that would be alive when all these events would take place, when all these prophecies would come to fulfillment. And one of them in particular is what I'm reading now, talking about such as great tribulations, not was since the beginning of the world until this time, no, nor ever shall be. And unless those days should be shortened, no flesh would be saved. Talking about the passing of the generation. So what God was showing us here in that chapter, where Jesus said in verse 34, he says, when these events come to place, it's the time of the fig tree, that the generation that is alive when all these things happen, that generation shall not pass. Now, when was it possible that we could destroy all flesh from civilization? It wasn't during World War II. It wasn't at the end of World War II because we had used up the nuclear bombs that we had, and they would have had to build some more. So there wasn't enough nuclear power at that time. However, by the time of 1950 or somewhere about that before or shortly afterwards, with the nuclear proliferation and Russia being involved, there was enough nuclear power to destroy all flesh off the face of the earth. So one of the signs that Jesus told us is right there in verse 22, that it was the generation that would be alive at the time when it's possible to destroy all flesh. That generation shall not pass. So what are we looking at with World War II? We're looking at those generations dying out, and God says before they're all gone, He says that generation shall not pass. So we're getting pretty close to the time that it appears of the fig tree and the warning that Jesus Christ gave us. Now, there was a second warning that came about that I thought about when I began to put this sermon together, and it comes about through a book that's called At Dawn We Slept. It was like the nation was asleep. So the parallel of the United States going into World War II and our preparedness was very similar to the warnings that God gives us in Matthew 25, talking about the patterns of the church. And we read Matthew 25, verse 25, "Then the kingdom of heaven shall be likened to 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. Now 5 of them were wise and 5 were foolish." So what God's telling us is a warning, very similar to the man who wrote the book about World War II, that at dawn we slept because we just wasn't ready, that many in God's churches will not be ready and prepared for the time when it comes. So it's a time of warning that Jesus Christ is actually talking about. So what I've done today, and we talked with our team who puts this together every week, is that we want to offer you now a special video that was presented in 2006 that's actually more important today from the vault. So if we have that ready, we can play that intro for this sermon that we're going to be showing you today.
Mr. Vice President, Mr. Speaker, members of the Senate, of the House of Representatives, yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled. For all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened.
When I actually went back looking at to find this sermon, it reminded me of this was actually our first year for the COGMI. We had began just to dig into how to begin to create more powerful videos. We actually built right here from the studio, what I'm in today, with this beautiful studio. We actually took a corner of our church building and we put up a green screen. And that's what you're looking at in that video when you go online. So I want to tell you, it's not the greatest quality. It was our learning experiences. But the information that you'll find in that sermon is more pertinent today than it was 10 years ago. So if you go to it, just remember that that was one of our first attempts to do what we're doing today. And you can see how the difficulties, some of the things that we went into. But all in all, it was just a start, and the message is very important. So we wanted to bring that to you from the vault. That was 10 years ago, and you heard the video intro. In addition to that, we also created at that time a Bible study handout. It was for the PowerPoint sermon that you can watch. Then you can go online and you'll find it online. Just click on it. You can actually download it. And many of the things I talk about in that DVD is in this Bible study program here. It's only 4 pages long, and it'll take you to a greater understanding of the prophecies and the warnings that God was talking about that center around Matthew 24, which is the Olivet prophecy. So I hope you will. If you find it of interest, help us out. Share it with a friend. Take the email alert that you got today, just click forward to somebody and share it with a friend, a family member, somebody in a church, and give them the same information that we've been passing out. And I'm sure you're going to help them to give them more knowledge and truth upon the Bible. All right, now, news nuggets and insights. That's it for this week. We hope you enjoyed it. A lot of information there. Until next week, we hope you have a great week, have a great Sabbath, and God be with you till next week.